This last month, the city of angels, which has been living like the city of devils, is asking, where is God? Of course, God is saying, here I am, and here is my holiness. Also, speaking of the issue of holiness, God is not mocked. Billy Carson versus Wes Huff. Let's talk about all that today as we watch your culture stray further every day. Howdy, Jonathan Fiala for Further Every Day, joined by a full panel today. Got on my right, Miss Nikki. How are you?
Good. How are you today?
Doing well, and you?
Good. I'm glad to be back. It's been a long time.
I'm glad you're here in the chair of theology. Yours truly in the chair of culture, and to the left, we got downstream of culture is, philosophy.
Philosophy.
Downstream of philosophy is culture. I'm tired. Go ahead.
It's all right.
Hi,
Happy
Charlie.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. And please ignore the glasses. They're not for coolness effect. They are for preserving the sensitivity of light to my eyes.
If you are on audio, Mr. Charlie just had eye surgery, so be in prayer for him. But he is recovering.
Charles.
Getting better.
I'm glad you're here. To his left in politics, we got the Steve. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Politically incorrect as usual.
As always.
Yes.
So, moving through to the first thing that we are going to talk about today is the California fires. So, here's a question for y'all. Do the policies that we've implemented to fight climate change, do they work? Because we've had California under Democrat rule, under climate change policies for how many years?
I'm going to say 10 to 12.
Decades of
minimum
destruction by the leftist agenda. And by the way, they get a lot of their ideas about fire suppression from the same Germanic school of thought that birthed critical theory. And so all of this kind of converges into this unholy matrimony. Mr. Producer, if you could pull up the first clip, it's going to be on the screen, downstream key. Yep. So, yep. And go ahead and pull that up. Give me the first YouTube video, please. We'll get to that. Give me the first YouTube video, and we're going to be looking at verifying some of the claims about the fire, because some things are there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I'm thinking that it's actually good to cover some of what's really going on with the fire, and we'll talk about it. Go ahead and play this clip.
Misinformation often spreads during emergencies, like the California wildfires. So our Verify team has been tracking claims online to fact-check them. First, is it true that Los Angeles recently cut the budget of its fire department? Yes, we can verify that's true. Last year's budget for the city of LA allocated just over $837 million to fire. The current budget allocates just under $820 million. That's $17.5 million fewer dollars, about a 2% cut.
Where did
Second,
it go?
Are firefighters running out of water because the city refused to fill up its reservoirs? No, that is false. A local water policy expert told Verify, quote, "At no time during this fire has there been a shortage of water in Southern California.
That is incorrect.
The reservoirs are full." The issue, according to the water department, isn't a lack of water, it's getting the water where it needs to go. Demand is so high right now.
i.e. a lack
as
of water
travels through the pipes
where it
leaving
needs
the
to go.
reservoir, a lot of it gets used up by firefighters who are closer to the source before it can reach crews and tanks that are farther away. The city is working to help those crews by using water trucks. And third, is this video of a man trying to rescue a rabbit from the flames from the LA fires? We can verify this is also false. Using reverse search tools, we found the video is not from the current fires. It was recorded and posted 8 years ago. That fire also took place in Southern California, and the man successfully rescued the rabbit.
Okay, everyone say,
I'm Casey Decker.
3, 2, 1, aw.
Oh, the rabbit.
Aw, the rabbit's alive. But
Are you sure?
he supposedly. I mean,
He rescued the rabbit. It could have been a barbecue.
it could have been a barbecue. Could have been for a barbecue. But
That's it.
all of that to say, fire is not, there's never been a shortage of water. Tell that to the fighters whose hoses were dry. It's all in the reservoir, which they were supposed to spend money on desalination plants. They were supposed to spend money on dispersion of water. But what have they done? They've defunded the fire department. And by the way, they sent $21 million of funds to Ukraine. And there are 12. There are 12 of these fire departments in Ukraine that say we are ready for any emergency. But of course, I think LA could have used that, and they donated, I don't know how much equipment, but it was in the millions of dollars of surplus fire equipment. I bet that would have been helpful right about now to Ukraine.
And if I'm not mistaken, didn't they kind of do away with a bunch of dams and reservoirs because of
Spelt.
little bitty 1 inch, 2 inch fish?
Spelt. And so
just
they have full
so they
reservoirs.
don't have reservoirs. They don't have water for the communities. They don't have water, period,
Well,
in
you know,
California.
let's get back to $17 million because that sounds like a lot of money to us. But when you're talking about 2% on the budget, it's not very much. Not when you're talking $837 million 1 year and the next year $820 million. If you've ever sat on any kind of budget committee, 2% is not really considered a terrible cut. Okay.
Well, let's hear from the people who are actually in the know on this. Ryan, the producer guy in the producer seat, by the way. Thank you, sir. Go ahead and put up the next YouTube video. And this one is of the people in charge. And this is on CBS. Go ahead and roll this.
Would that $17 million that had been cut from your budget have made a difference in this fight?
I would say with the lean forward posture that we took,
She's
knowing
pushing
that
her.
a $17 million cut, we had to take from somewhere, and that was from the non-essential duties and responsibilities that as a fire department we have taken on over the past many, many years.
But with all due respect, in December you had warned that the budget cuts would severely limit your ability to respond to large-scale emergencies.
I beg your pardon?
Is that true or not?
Yes, so I
She
would
did.
say yes, we were limited to a certain factor, yes.
Thank you.
And let me ask you about how that limited your response.
So,
That's the perfect response there. That's a perfect question.
because she literally said in December, or September rather, I believe it was, in an interview, cutting these funds is going to cause severe problems when it comes to boots on the ground. Yes, money's fungible. You're able to move funds around from here or there. But at the time, they were saying it was going to severely affect our ability to respond to these fires.
Okay, I need to know what the non-essentials are. I mean,
I know.
how non-essential? She made it imply we were taking on responsibilities that were really not our responsibility. What was that? Was
So
that have
this-
anything to do with clearing brush?
That's not a non-essential.
Don't know. And they have purposefully decided to stop clearing brush. And so here's California's strategy on this. They have decided that it is cheaper to rely on the federal government and
Yes.
FEMA
Yes.
aid to come in and clean up these homes after everything's been burned down than it is to just manicure and maintain their natural growth and their underbrush.
I think something that needs to be brought out here is that if you read through the Marxist type agendas in the Saul Alinsky stuff, the goal is to collapse the government.
Mm-hmm.
And what better way to collapse it than push all the financial responsibility back onto the federal government? What has FEMA been saying? We don't have money. We don't have money. If you take a situation like this that is going to go upwards of $50 billion, okay, folks, you just handed over how many billions to Ukraine? And now we're going to add on 50 billion. When you're talking about an Elon Musk and a Vivek Ramaswamy coming in to do the Doge type activities that has been suggested, it's no wonder. It's because we have bloated the federal government so bad that there's no possible way that we can pay for that which we're using. This is a perfect illustration of shifting financial responsibility from the state level to the federal level. And if we had New York State, if we had Texas, if we had Alaska do these kind of things, and Alaska is a different kind of animal there. I'm just talking size and proximity. But if you were to take those states that I just mentioned, you would put a severe hurting on the federal government. And this is precisely why Donald Trump has threatened not to have any FEMA money for California. You can't fault him for saying it.
They keep coming back to the well for the same silly mistakes, and we are paying for it. And in fact, I did miss dropping this into the show map. You had 2 weeks before this, put on your tinfoil hats here. 2 weeks before the fires in the Palisades, 1,600 homes were dropped off the list. Now, you can attribute this to some sort of conspiracy, or just the fact of the matter is these folks have been having their homes burned down over and over again, and they've failed to actually provide a safe habitation for themselves by electing the same Newsom and these people who are in the LA fire department. It's just insane.
So when you said 1,600 drop off, what are you referring to?
They lost their coverage.
So 1,600
so-
policies were canceled.
Allstate canceled
That's-
1,600 policies.
Okay, so that was where I was going to go next, is because I remember back in June or July, a coworker, her homeowner's insurance would not renew them, and she's like, "I don't understand. I've been a customer for 10 years." And they said, "Well, the risk for a hurricane is greater this year, and so you're too much of a risk." So, did these insurance companies drop these people because they saw the risk, because certain things were not being done, and they could see that a fire could start, and this could? Is that where you're going with that?
Yes. So check the Further Everyday chat, Mr. Producer. And poor Ryan, he's doing everyone's job here. Good job there. check the chat, because I actually want to pull this up. This is from CBS. Thousands of Los Angeles homeowners were dropped by their insurers before the Palisades fires. We're talking about probably billions at this point of dollars of loss.
Yeah.
When you're talking about 100 homes that are worth, thank you, sir, 100 homes that are worth $10 million, I mean, that goes fast. So you're talking about many, many, many more homes than that have been destroyed. And 1,600 policies, about 1,600 policies in the Pacific Palisades were dropped by State Farm in July. California Department of Insurance spokesman Michael Soler said in a Thursday interview with CBS Money Watch, an analysis of insurance data provided by CBS San Francisco last year found that State Farm also dropped more than 2,000 policies in other Los Angeles zip codes, which include Brentwood, Calabasas, Hidden Hills, and Monte Nideo neighborhoods. So these are some of the nicest neighborhoods in LA, and they are absolutely getting destroyed. You're going to see a push from these people for Gavin Newsom to come hat in hand to the federal government and demand that we rebuild their homes. And I don't want to sound unkind. I don't want to sound malicious. If you don't work, you don't eat. If you continue to rely upon a government that is intentionally burning down your state, it is either the grossest of negligence or it's intentional at this point.
And I think my personal opinion is that it's intentional. And this, quite frankly, is not any different than the situation with New Orleans during Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. And
I'd say it's worse.
And I would agree with that. And for those of you that are in the New Orleans area, I'm not trying to poo-poo all over you. Look, why would we allow people to sit and live in a bowl? That makes no sense whatsoever. Now, what have they done in the meantime? They've gone ahead and put in the dike systems and everything. Okay, well, that's all well and fine. When should that have been done? Not after Katrina. Mm-hmm. When should the forest floors have been cleaned? Not after a Palisades fire. Not after an Altadena fire. This should have been done before. And by the way, you can hate Trump all you want. Newsflash, he brought this issue up way before now. This has been one of his issues from the very get-go when he was first elected. And this is why I say it's intentional. because there has been an intentional degree of we are not going to clean up the forest floor. Well, okay. This is
the
what
result.
you get. This is what you get.
This is the absolute result of that. And so you also want to look at, hey, Mr. Producer, my eyes are over here. Thank you. You can also get, I'm just messing with you. This man is doing everything. We need to get him one more buddy back there. This is all culminating in one spot, and now we're getting to see what DEI and what German School of Thought does with critical theory and with the idea that the nature needs to be preserved to the point of even from itself. Even from itself, you cannot do self burns, you can't do back burns. But now we see DEI coming out in personnel. And so if you can pull up that Abram B. Iyer on X excerpt, Mr. Producer, I'd love to throw that up there. And let's just hear from a firefighter by the name of Christine Larson, what she thinks her job is. And these are the people who are in your leadership in LA.
Want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
Wow.
Pause that.
Just bring the volume down and let it roll.
Oh, that just irks me.
What a
Because
sick
that's an
person.
assumption that you can control every situation in an emergency.
Well, let me say this. What's on the side of the engine? Fire, rescue. What is your job, lady? It's to rescue. And by the way, I don't want someone that looks like me. Okay. I want 6'8" Bubba or Tyrone. I don't care if he looks like Tyrone. I don't care if he looks like Bubba. I want 6'8" gigantor man that looks like Andre the Giant hitting
Yes,
hitting my front door.
Yes, sir.
I want that man.
Okay, I don't think that. Let me just interrupt.
Oh, she wants.
Yes,
Oh, she's
let me
gonna
just interrupt.
get the rain cloud
You
out.
are correct when it comes to I want the strongest, the biggest guy. If I'm stuck and trapped in a fire, that's who I want to see come through the window. However, on the ground, there are people that are scared and that are hurting, are going to relate better to a woman than they will to a man.
That's fine.
I'm good with that.
Yeah. So when she's making that comment, that is a true thing. She went too far.
No, she didn't go the right direction.
Right.
She should have said, if he gets himself in that situation, you bet I'm going to carry him out. And I am capable. But she didn't.
Right. But I would just want to say that even in the police department, they have people who go to these terrible crime scenes, and they're there for support. I mean, we know that.
That's what a chaplain's
But
for.
see,
That's not a
If you
firefighter.
look at that woman, though.
You're right. A chaplain is absolutely necessary, and right-along chaplains have a great place, and that could be man or woman.
Hang on, Steve.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Real quick, I want to say that woman looked husky. She looked like she could handle a few things. And you know what?
No.
I'm sitting there and I'm listening to her, and I'm in agreement with you, Nikki.
I know.
I'm okay with what she said up to that point. When she said, "Can I carry that dude out?" I'm sitting there putting myself in that position, and I'm sitting there going, "Yes, you can. You can do it."
No,
and
she's a
she
jelly
didn't
roll.
even go close to that.
You are what you eat, Mr. Charlie, and that is a jelly roll.
Well,
I don't think
Here's the thing.
come on, Steve.
Okay. A guy goes in to
Sorry.
a burning home. Okay. There's a child in a bedroom. It's in a closet. The bedroom is on fire. The firefighter goes through the bedroom where there's flames. He's going through there. A wall falls as he's going through. The house has been on fire for who knows how long. You have a 7-year-old hiding in the closet because why? Scared to death.
Correct. Right.
Parents are outside. They're screaming, "Save my baby." The firefighter goes in there to save it, and is coming out and it starts to fall, he gets the child away from him. Somebody else grabs the child. That guy gets trapped under a wall.
Mm-hmm.
Now they got to get him out. Now, she's going to blame that guy for being in that situation?
Yeah, exactly.
And because he put...
Yeah.
Really?
Point being,
Let me
wokeness
just
is the
say
wrong
this.
mentality.
Well, and let me just say, I am not, if a woman can do the same thing that a man can do, she ought to be able to do it and get paid for it, okay? And
But they can't do that kind of work.
well, you would have to there are women weightlifters who are
Steroids.
pretty darn strong.
You can do it with steroids.
And I'm just saying
Somewhat.
that if you want to be a fireman or a firewoman, whatever you want to call it, that's fine. But you pass the test the same way everybody else does.
Yep, that's it.
That I mean,
Meritocracy.
there's no discrimination in that.
And I can say this, if she were to show up at my home when it's on fire, go home.
Yeah.
I do not want to see you. Get
oh my
out.
God.
Yes.
Get out of my face.
Because
The
I
reason
guarantee
I
you,
would say
she
that-
cannot drag me out of the house.
She's not even willing to.
You know, that's the issue, is that she has this woke mind virus in her heart and mind.
Yes.
And you can see, it exudes, it oozes off of this woman, and she has no real heart for what she's doing. Usually when you imagine a firefighter, you hope that you have a stoic who is ready to lay it down. They're going to say, if I have to, I'm going to do everything that I can. Not, oh, well, boo-hoo, sucks to be him. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's not what you're looking for when you're looking for a firefighter. You want someone who's going to be a can-do type personality. And that's why I would say it's unfortunate that we're hiring this lady, but we're hiring, by the way, if there was a dude who gave that response, if he was a muscular dude, I would still say, out, rouse, none of that. Like, no, that's not an acceptable.
If a man said that, that would not be acceptable.
Amen.
So,
That's right.
and that's our point. Our point is, if a dude acted like that, if I had a guy, it says, you know, whatever color, let's say that we had a white guy, it says, you know, when you have a fire, you want someone who's going to show up that looks like you. Everyone would say, wait a minute, what?
I don't care what you look like.
I don't care what you look like, sweetheart. You know, you can be 6'8", but I don't care what you look like. How much can you bench? And that's what I'm going to be saying. If I have a dude saying that, I'm going to give him that response. But we give women the benefit of the doubt. We have for years. It's been part of the pact between the two sexes, is that men are supposed to, not always do we do it, we are supposed to take the knocks. We are supposed to take the blame. The woman is supposed to be protected.
Correct.
And the woman is supposed to also, whenever something goes wrong, well, it's her man's fault for putting her in that position or allowing her into that position. It's the man's fault. And we've given that and kept that on the feminist, who does not deserve it. They do not hold our same worldview.
But I will say, and I said earlier, there is a place for a woman at that scene. Absolutely.
In the
And
form of a
there's-
chaplain or a counselor. I agree.
Well, you know, I'm not even gonna say that part of it. I don't know what each responsibility is. I'm not that familiar, but I do know that, like I said, if you want the same title, you have to do the same thing.
She's
That's all
not
there is.
disagreeing with you.
There's
I'm not
a reason
disagreeing.
they don't put women on the front line when they have wars.
Yeah.
There's a reason they
Yes,
don't do
there-
that.
And I'm in agreement with Nikki. If they can do the work and they can do the same test and they can do all that, hey, you get after it. Go for it.
And Steve
Go
is
for
correct,
it.
though. And Steve, you are correct, too. They don't put women on the front line. And as a matter of
Right.
fact, you know, we want to blur the lines. But
Right.
the reality is you don't see a lot of women who are on garbage trucks. And let me just tell you, that
Right.
is thank you.
That's-
Thank you for taking that job.
That's a
Thank you.
tough
I
job.
really appreciate it. You don't see a lot of women doing this really hard construction. We're living in a brand new subdivision. Those guys I watch them every single day. That is hard.
Very
work.
hard work.
And every time I see them out there, I'm thinking, I couldn't do that.
Can you imagine when you watch these guys during like August when it's 105 degrees outside? Think about that.
Yes.
All day long.
I mean, it's hard. They're working so hard. So physically, women are not normally attracted to things that are physically taxing, like the construction and, and being the first in line in war. That's not usually where a woman wants to be.
Californians, you need to hold your elected leaders accountable.
Agreed, Charlie.
And
It's costing you everything.
it's costing you everything,
It is.
including the beautiful state that you have been blessed to live in.
Speaking of costing you everything,
Oh,
let's talk about someone who took a swing at God Almighty in his whole career. A fellow. Are you done there?
Consequences.
I'm beginning to wonder who Ray Charles is.
Oh my gosh. So you've got a fellow
Charlie.
by the name of Billy. His name's Billy Carson, and he's made his living
Hello, Billy.
attacking Christianity and attacking the veracity of the Bible and the scriptural integrity. And so he has he's a speaker, an author. He has his own podcast. He's all over the place talking about how the traditional understanding of Jesus Christ is just off because the evidence weighs against Jesus Christ. And that you look at the textual evidence, Jesus didn't really live even potentially, or at least he was just a man who married Mary Magdalene, and his kids are probably walking around today. There are people who are descendants of Jesus walking around today. This is Billy Carson. This is his worldview. This is what he's been saying for
His
years.
interpretation, the way
His worldview.
Right.
Yeah. And so, and interpretation's a loose word because you actually have to study something to have an interpretation.
Right.
But
I step back on that one, Arthur.
But I'm spoiling a little bit. So this is why we encourage you to apologetics. Apologetics is a beautiful thing because if you know the reason for which you believe, but also you have some good basic debate skills, you can ask people a question. Well, what do you mean by that? Where is that found? How do you find that? And so without further ado, I'm going to ask Mr. Producer to pull up our next clip. And we're going to look at a couple of different parts of the debate. I'm going to ask Mr. Producer to pause once in a while. And we've got two different clips out of this. And this goes really fun. If you've been living under a rock and you have not seen this yet, you're in for a treat of a story. Go ahead and play it, Mr. Producer.
Podcast. The statement is according to the Sinai Bible. Okay. According to the Sinai Bible.
okay. Can we pause there for just a moment? Okay. Guys, we didn't even get out of the first 10 seconds, and we have to make a correction here. There is no such thing as a cyanide Bible.
Just keep going. Keep going, Mr. Producer. Let's just...
God.
It's thick. This is thick. And when I say thick, it's full of you know what.
We're going to have to just get through it. Okay?
Go ahead and play
Come
it.
on, Charlie.
Do your thing, Mr.
Wasn't
Producer.
crucified in that Bible. That Bible predates the King James version of the Bible, and the text there actually is about 12 to 14,000 differences between the Sinai Bible and the King James version of the Bible, which came much later. And then also one of the things that were interesting is that they discovered the book of Jesus' wife, which is at the Harvard Seminary, which according to some scholars, it's a little controversial, but they claim that this is an accurate record that Jesus may have even been married, which then, adds more, if that's true, it adds more to, the hypothesis that maybe he wasn't crucified. I just personally believe that Jesus was an amazing human being. I don't think that he was the Son of God in the sense that he's God, but that we're all gods. As he said, ye are gods, and that we're to do greater things in him. And I just personally believe that the return of the Christ is the return of the Christ consciousness, when we can all achieve a certain level of knowledge with.
So he goes into espouse effectively a very ancient Gnostic heresy. He thinks he's new and he's cool and that he's doing something that no one has ever done before. But Paul and Peter and Jude they all spoke about people like Billy Carson in different ways, in different parts of his thought. This is not new. We have addresses of this in the first century locked in. Now, what are some questions, Mr. Charlie, Mr. Steve, Miss Nikki, what are some questions that you would want to ask Billy if you were having that conversation? Is there anything that's important here? Like, what are some of the first questions we should ask?
Does he have a copy of the Sinai Bible?
Actually, Wes Huff has the Sinaiticus in spoilers. He has it right here, and he knows what he's talking about.
The Sinaiticus, right?
Yeah, which is, by the way, it's supposedly the world's oldest Bible. I do not believe it to be that old. I believe it was a manuscript that was stolen during a time where ancient manuscripts took a high value, and because you actually have evidence that it was a creation by just a normal, ordinary monk in the 1840s. But supposedly it's this new revelation. And whether it's old or it's new, Matthew, Luke, and John have the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Mark's the only one that is missing the part of a chapter. So,
and what's interesting is that it is clear from those accounts that he was seen of about 500 people.
Correct.
Right.
That's a lot of people to dispute.
And so he's going to switch up, and you're going to notice something. People like Billy Carson, he doesn't know what he's talking about, so he switches in the Gospel of Barnabas in a moment. So, Mr. Producer, I'd like to play just a little bit more because we're going to get Wes's response. This is the next clip from them. So if you have that one pulled up, it's ready. Yep. Thank you, sir.
A lot of people that saw him hanging on the cross too.
Yep. Go ahead,
as
Mr.
proof. And then I want Billy to answer, and also, I'm just curious, like the Sinai Bible, where was that piece
I found
discovered?
the text where I was referencing. Actually, I was misquoted. I misquoted there. It's the Gospel of Barnabas.
So he had to switch.
I haven't been able to take my eyes off my husband's pants since he tried.
Pause that. I'm not sure what happened there, but those YouTube ads kind of are intrusive. So we're gonna.
This ain't good.
We're gonna just move through that. So basically, that clip that we were trying to play, Wes comes out and goes, "Hey, here's the Sinaiticus. If you're talking about the Sinaiticus, I have the Sinaiticus right here, and it's this ancient, manuscript. It has the Septuagint in it, and it's this older Bible, and it's supposedly the world's oldest Bible, 325, 350, somewhere in there is supposedly made. I believe it was made in the 1800s based on the evidence and the history that was there. Neither here nor there. Has the resurrection of Jesus Christ in 3 places. So what does Billy Carson do? He has to say, I misquoted myself. I'm sorry. It's actually the Gospel of Barnabas. And then he continues to do this. He does this with Mary. And eventually he ends up with Mary Magdalene no longer being Jesus' wife. He concedes that point. He concedes the next point. And he just sort of eventually loses. So, Mr. Producer, let's see if we have better luck with what happened immediately after this debate.
We are not responsible for commercials, so just...
We are not responsible for commercials.
Right.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
This is all a YouTube thing, okay?
So go ahead and pull up the...
Well, so that's good.
Let's
Go
ahead and pull up the next clip. There we go. So after this debate, Wes Huff comes out and he posts this video. I'm okay with playing this video all the way through. Go ahead.
Billy Carson is attempting to sue me. For those of you who don't know, I was invited to interact with Billy on a podcast that he agreed to come on. It was not his podcast, where he was notified beforehand who I was and what we'd be talking about. After that debate took place, Billy attempted to suppress the footage. That didn't really work. I've released clips from that conversation. While Billy does not want you to see those clips and has sent me a cease and desist letter. I was really hoping that this could be an opportunity for Billy to learn, to see the major errors that he's been repeating and turn this into a learning experience. I even offered to follow up with Billy in order to show him how and where he could find accurate and credible resources in order to make sure that what he was saying was verifiably correct going forward in the future, so he and his audience could learn and proceed knowledgeably. Billy did not agree. But unfortunately for Billy, agreeing to a debate, losing that debate, and feeling embarrassed about that loss does not constitute legitimate grounds to litigate. Billy, I will agree to all the terms and conditions of the cease and desist letter that you have sent me if you agree to run it back, sit down with me in person, and have another discussion. This is my formal response.
That's a really good Christian response. And so now that we've gotten past the ad, Mr. Producer, can you go ahead and play that clip? I want to start. So for those of you who are following along at home, it's 1409 through 1740. And this is the original response from Wesley Huff to a number of what Billy Carson said.
With that too, because I've actually worked with, there are two manuscripts of the Gospel of Barnabas. The Gospel of Barnabas is a really interesting document because it is a known forgery. And so that's why I think it's important to get to these sources. So at the very start of the Gospel of Barnabas, which we only have two copies of, one is in Italian and one is in Spanish, we see right off the bat that the Gospel of Barnabas, not to be confused with either the Epistle of Barnabas or the Acts of Barnabas, which are two apocryphal documents from the 2nd century, but the Gospel of Barnabas in particular, we know it's a forgery because it does things like in chapter 92, it says that Jesus spent 40 days on Mount Sinai, and then he came to the Jordan River and he walked to Jerusalem. But Mount Sinai is more than a week's journey away from Jerusalem, and neither Mount Sinai nor Jerusalem are close to the Jordan River. So never mind there not being a route from the Jordan River to like around Mount Sinai or going to Jerusalem. But there are internal problems with the Gospel of Barnabas, which indicate that it shows no actual indication of evidence of coming from or even having knowledge of first century Jewish understanding. It actually says Jesus is the Christ, but not the Messiah, which indicates that whoever the author is, he didn't know that those were the same words. And I think a bigger problem is that the Gospel of Barnabas actually paraphrases Dante's Inferno, which was written in 1314. So there's a lot of internal evidences that disqualify the Gospel of Barnabas, never mind the fact that we don't have any evidence of it prior to the 14th century, and none in any other language other than Middle Age Italian Italian and Spanish. But the internal content of the Gospel of Barnabas disqualifies it from being ancient. And then the fact that it's doing things like paraphrasing Dante, or it also refers to a rule of the time of Jubilee, which was changed in the Middle Ages from what it was in the biblical year of Jubilee. And it goes with the Middle Ages concept, not the ancient concept. So I think what I'm getting at is, so I'm a historian and I deal with sources. So when I'm looking at sources, I want to make sure that I have a methodology by which I approach any type of source. So if there is something that denies the crucifixion, I want to make sure that I'm analyzing it and that the methodology by which I analyze it actually reveals that the content can be accurately tied to the event.
Thank you, Mr. Producer.
If we're talking about...
which apparently
Billy has never done.
Exactly.
And so I want you, dear believer, to feel confident in your Bible. If you have a 66 book of the Bible, you probably have a pretty decent, accurate representation. And I say this with all the Book of Tobit, some of these other books that are, in the Deuterocanon, I have some issues with, because Tobit has some of the same issues that the Gospel of Barnabas has, with bad triangulation. The people were not in those places, did not walk those distances because everything is wrong. And you've got stuff that directly contradicts the rest of the canon of Scripture in, say, the Book of Tobit. So if you have 66 books in your Bible, and you have a Bible that was translated by godly people, you probably have a pretty amazing Bible, and you can trust that it's been remarkably preserved.
Amen.
And I'm a big fan of the King James, not a King James only guy, but by and large, especially if you're dealing with a majority text Bible, you are super secure, you're super safe, you've got a great Bible. So when these people come to attack, it's important to know what you believe and why you believe it, because God can use you. Because if you, again, have not been watching, Mr. Producer, I want the next clip. This is a fun one. This conversation and this controversy where Billy Carson even went so far as to go to the host or the host editor's house, banging on the door at 2 a.m. saying, do not release that footage. Do not release that footage. This whole controversy, who Billy Carson, being a Joe Rogan guest and alumni, attracted some interesting attention. And that's how we have this clip, Mr. Producer. If you're ready, sir, throw up the Joe Rogan clip with Wes Huff.
Oh, interesting.
And you could wake me up at 4 o'clock in the morning and ask me about those things. And I go, oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
This is what it is.
Yeah.
I know, like martial arts or comedy. I could tell you, I could give you an expert version of reality.
Uh-huh.
It seems like he does not have that, and he is a wonderful talker, and it's a lot of fun. I like watching his videos. I love all that ancient history stuff, and even the most ridiculous tinfoil hat aspects of ancient. It's fun.
It's entertainment.
But I know that there's a different. Like Andrew Schultz and I had a discussion about this. Like he said when he had Billy on the podcast, he said we're not going to research anything. We're not going to search anything. We're not going to do anything. We'll just let him talk because it's fun.
Yeah.
Andrew's awesome.
So pause.
But when he
then goes on to say,
Sorry about the language.
Sorry about the language. But you've got Andrew Schultz and Joe Rogan and all these other people who are looking now, and they're seeing all these larger names. They're seeing someone who is a sharp tool in the hands of the Lord. And Wesley Huff, you may or may not agree with everything that he says. I mean, I've done some research into him. He and I have some mild differences of opinion on different things. But my gosh, what a studied guy!
He is very well studied,
and he's like 33.
He's young. I think he's older than 33. But
No. It's early 30s. It's early 30s.
I'd have to look. I thought he was older than that.
He's sharp.
Yes.
He's a sharp dude, and he went to he actually, if you watch the Rogan interview all the way through, by the way, link in the description below as always, he went to the police academy, and somewhere in there God got a hold of him, and he got interested in biblical literacy and textual criticism, and he started doing research. It's amazing what God can do, putting you on the world's largest podcast. Because you're willing and you're ready to just ask questions. He basically just asked Billy Carson questions. I wouldn't even say that he owned Billy Carson. He didn't.
No, I agree.
He didn't drown him.
That's right.
He didn't drag him through the mud. He just said, "Well, Billy, I usually deal with facts, and I need to know like your sources. And when I look at your sources, and there was a point where he got into this debate where Billy said a bunch of unsubstantiatable claims." And he says, well, based on your treatment of, the Sinai Bible versus the, Gospel of Barnabas, the Sinaiticus, and Mary and Jesus having a relationship, which was just, he debunked that. He goes, I don't even know what to say to you unless you can get me, early source manuscripts. I'm very curious, but I'm also not really sure I can go with you on that road because you have proven that sometimes you don't research this stuff. And I think that's a very gentle response to someone who's saying that your Savior is nothing more than a man. Mm-hmm. I think that's a very gentle response.
I think we may be, I'm praying that we're turning the tide here, is that journalists have gotten away for so long without being able to back up what they say. Sensationalism sells. And so they come out with stuff and it grabs people's attention and they go with it, but they don't back it up. And it may not be true or it may be true, but the reader has got to hold the journalist, accountable. And I know I read a headline, a Democratic senator came out and said, see what's happening in California when Trump takes office, that's going to happen all over the United States. And it's like, the not the fires but the catastrophes, and I'm thinking, what a dumb thing to say when the Democrats are the ones who
led this.
Who are the leadership there? That's not very wise. And so, but he can come out and say that because he is counting on the fact that he can apply to the people who are afraid of Trump. He doesn't have to back up what he's saying. He doesn't have to prove anything. So this young man who is going out there, Billy Carson, he has been raised in a generation that they do not have to back up what they say.
That's it.
And he's been flying on those coattails. And people now are stopping, and I think they're saying, can you prove that? Is that true?
I want sources.
Yes.
I want sources. And you know, that's something that we've done here. I've had changes of opinion over the years based on looking for the sources. You know, growing up, I grew up in Christmas was a pagan holiday. Easter was a pagan holiday. And then when I was told, back that up. Okay, I'll back that up. You know what I couldn't back up? My worldview.
Well,
my opinion, because you start to research and you look for ancient sources in source texts and you start to find, oh, this is just pop. This is like candy and cake for pop culture.
Yes.
But there's no substance to it. And it just, you like to consume this stuff, but it's nonsense and it's not founded in any reality.
And it makes you a better person, actually. If you remember last week, when I said something and then Jonathan came back and said, well, does this apply for this? I went, oh, that statement can't be true because what Jonathan just said makes it, you know, and so you stop and you think, okay.
We were discussing theology and someone that we know popped out. He says, but wait a minute, can you apply that across your whole theological standard? He gave an example.
And he did. He gave an example and it made me stop and say, oh, I can't. No, he's right. I can't do that. And so Jonathan did not offend me. Jonathan did not harm me in any way. Jonathan helped me because I made a statement that I believe to be a true statement. And in some situations, it is a true statement. But in that situation, it was not.
It was a particular expressed as a universal. And then you realize, oh, that particular needs some clarification in the particular, but it doesn't belong in a universal by any stretch.
That's correct.
And so we need to be studying to show ourselves approved. I think that's the summation of today. And I want to get everyone's final thoughts, but I'm going to start with, I think we need to be wise as serpents, as innocent as doves. We need to be looking at why are these fires starting? By the way, we didn't get to the clips, but that's okay. We have clips of people starting the fires. There are numerous social media clips of people, and I don't know if they're homeless. I don't know, tinfoil hat. I don't know if they're...
Should I put mine on?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't know if... Steve loves his tinfoil hat. I don't know if hey, maybe this whole thing is just a scheme to burn down L.A., decrease the cost of the houses, take everyone's insurance away from them, and then allow Chinese buyers to come in and buy up everything. Like,
sure,
it would only take 10 people to make that decision. Don't know, but there are people starting the fires. Or is it just reckless negligence by the government allowing homeless people who are crazy? And I'm not saying homeless people are crazy. I'm saying there are homeless people who are also crazy. In that Venn diagram overlap, they're allowed to roam around and start fires. They're living in the dry brush. They're smoking crack cocaine, and they're doing all these other crazy things. You're going to have fires start. So whether it's a huge conspiracy or a small conspiracy or just gross wanton negligence, it doesn't matter. It can be fixed tomorrow with some smart action from the right people. The question is, are we showing ourselves studied to be approved? Do we know what to do and what to change? Can we turn around and can we be smart about where we are? Can we approach the culture with a Wes Huff question, childlike curiosity? Oh, is that really so? Why? What do you mean by that? Where do you get that? How do you know that that is true? And it is amazing how much of the enemy's strongholds will topple when you're just capable of asking questions. Final thoughts for the day, Miss Nikki.
I think that we need, speaking on these two subjects, we need to hold people accountable for what they say and what they do. If you really want to change the leadership, hold the journalists accountable. Make them prove what they say is true. And it will make a difference in who you start voting for, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
and people who are out there making any kind of statement. If you can't back it up, be quiet.
That's it. Mr. Charlie.
God is responsible for the facts of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ability to choose. Man is responsible for the acts of freedom. Who did you choose? You have chosen leaders that are incapable, and they are showing their colors very brightly. And it's all to the very disappointing loss of life and property in Southern California. I wished it were not so. But this is the result of very bad choices.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Steve?
Yeah, there's how it says there's accountability for your actions. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I think from what it appears in California, there's some little bit of accountability that's happening over there through a lot of the politicians' actions and what's happening.
Yeah.
And some of it has to do with the state burning down.
Yep.
And
there's already
actions for people that live there and what's happening. I mean, let's just look at the whole state in general on what goes on in that state, people.
Yep.
I mean, it's not now I'm not talking about the people. There's a lot of great people in California.
I have family there.
Okay.
Yeah, good people.
And then there are people there that are ruining what California is.
Mm-hmm.
And they're turning it into what it is today, which is a rotten egg.
Equity of outcome. Equity of outcome. We are all living in ashes. That's what DEI gets you. And just remember, folks, keep your eyes up on the Lord, your knees bent before him, and your head up, because things are changing right now. And it's wild. Things are going to move fast, for better or for worse. So make sure that you're studying to show yourself approved. Be involved, not just politically, but in your church and in your home. This country needs fathers. This country needs mothers. And this country needs leaders. If God has called you for such a time as this, you better be ready. With that said, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you've been watching on YouTube or Rumble, thank you. Thank you for listening. Hundreds of thousands of downloads on the audio. Thank you, folks, for that. With that said, leave a like, a comment, a share, all that good stuff. We love you so much. Got anything else? Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
If you're still there, one last thing. You're a super listener, or we put you to sleep. We got one last question for you, and we're going to start in here. What's your favorite type of meat, and how do you like to prepare it?
My favorite meat.
I'm coming for you, Mr. Producer.
Is ribeye steak. And I like it prepared by my husband, who does an amazing job, better than any steakhouse you could go to.
All right,
and and by the way, he doesn't do it on the grill. He does it in a cast iron
skillet.
Yes, he does.
You do a reverse sear?
Oh my goodness,
No,
it's so good. It is so good.
What do you do?
Well, I should say mine is seasoned very simply: salt, pepper, little garlic salt. And pan gets super hot.
Mm-hmm.
You wait for the pan to get super hot. 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes one side, 2 to 3 minutes the other side. Half a stick of butter.
This is the way.
Flip it back again for 2 minutes. We're basting. Flip it back over for 2 minutes. We're basting. This is on a thick steak, by the way.
Medium rare.
It'll be a nice medium rare steak.
And it will just melt in your mouth. It is so good and tender.
I know. I like it.
We love AOC.
So,
I'm sorry.
gosh.
I had to do that.
That's wild.
I had to do that.
So I'm assuming this is your favorite too, or do you have a different favorite?
I'm going to go with a different one. The
is your
ribeye is a great one.
Yeah,
I love ribeye.
I can go with a fantastic filet mignon.
Okay. The tenderloin is the best stuff. Steve.
Well.
Uh-oh. So Steve is a hunter, for those of you who don't know.
Well, let me go into a deep dive here. Let's see. Shall I get down my list?
No, just give us your favorite.
Just one.
My favorite. Oh,
Your favorite.
elk.
Elk,
Ooh.
and how do you prepare it?
My favorite part is the back strap. I like to bacon wrap it all up
That is a way to do it, yeah.
and take it and cook it on a barbecue pit for about 7-8 hours.
By the way, he killed the elk himself.
The ark.
Usually,
Killed
yes.
the ark elk.
Yark elk.
Well, yeah, I would have. Probably with my bow.
And he gutted it and he skinned it and
Yep.
then he cooked it up.
Did it all myself.
That's right.
Every
That's
bit.
Mr. Producer, what's your favorite type of meat?
Chicken.
Chicken? How do you like it prepared?
Grilled.
What?
Grilled
Grilled?
chicken.
Okay.
And what was yours?
Chicken nuggets? Is that what you said?
I
No,
gotta say,
Mr. Steve.
Oh,
I
grilled
gotta
chicken.
say, ribeye, and I usually smoke mine.
Okay.
So I got a Traeger grill. God gave my family and I a Traeger grill. Okay. And so the story on that is really short. Don't mock God. Sometimes it's nice. Sometimes it's not. This time it was nice. My mom says, "Hey, John," to my dad, "there's a road show in town on Costco Sam's. They have a Traeger." And Dad's like, "Okay, how much is it?" She tells him. And he goes, "We can't afford that. Dear God," let's all pray. "Dear God, if it's your will that you give us a Traeger, you're going to pray that you provide the money for this. Because, God, you're going to do this, right? If this is your will. Thank you, Lord. Amen." He wasn't quite that brusque, but it was just about. 4 minutes later, we open the mailbox. We open a letter. This letter says, "Dear Fialas, we've been asking the Lord about a love offering." This is after our house burned down. So money was tight. And so we didn't have the money for this.
Mr. Charlie's losing it.
This is great.
We opened
This is
the
so
letter.
God.
It says, "Dear Fialas, here is this love offering we've been asking the Lord about. We didn't know where to give it. It's not our tithe, but it's a love offering. He put it on our hearts to send it to you. Within $4 after tax, it was the price of this Traeger grill."
No way.
That is amazing.
That's God.
So we're like,
That is God, buddy.
yeah, that was God. I said, "Dad,
Amazing.
if you hadn't prayed that foolish prayer, we could have spent that on something we needed. Now we're getting a grill." Because there's no way that we're spending that money on anything other than a Traeger grill.
You bet.
And of
That's a
course,
sign that God wants you to eat meat.
That, right?
That's right.
We're going to have
These
to do a
kind of
ribeye
stories.
cook-off.
And I'll tell
I
you
would
what.
love to.
a
450, 3333 on a ribeye.
A Traeger cooks, man. Oh,
is
you
amazing.
talk about do some cooking.
And then you get the
Son.
blowtorch out and you give her a nice crust.
There you go.
Yep.
And that's how you do it. Tell us in the comment section how do you like your meat cooked. But that said, we love you so much. Got nothing else for you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.